What a week we had in college football. There's a lot to unpack. Let's take a look at some of the takeaways we have for week 12. The SEC is like the Big 12 in the Pac 12, not in the sense of the same caliber of football. I think it's undisputable that the SEC is the best conference they have been for many years. But this year, number one, I think they are not. I think this is the weakest SEC that we have seen in a while in terms of not any teams separating from themselves. But what the Big 12 and the Pac 12 have done historically and very recently is that they have beat up on each other in conference and they have eliminated one another. And like you get to a conference championship game and there are teams there with like 2 or 3 losses, and just because no one is that much better than the other teams in the conference, and they fight and crawl their way into a conference championship and they beat up each other the entire season. That's been happening for years in the Big 12 and in the Pac 12, RIP. But that's happening right now in the SEC. There's not one team. Like, who's the best team in the SEC right now? I have no idea. You can make a case for a ton of teams. And it's made for a very entertaining product. It's probably the best conference to watch right now. You got a collection of 2-loss, and there's some 1-loss teams still left there, but it's been a really fun conference to watch. But it's just a collection of teams beating up on each other, just like the Big 12 and the Pac 12 have done. So we'll see how this all shakes out. Arizona State enters themselves into one of the best stories in college football for this year. Now, there have been several great stories in college football this year, Colorado being one of them, BYU, Indiana, excellent story. Travis Hunter in and of itself, Ashton Genty in and of itself. Like, there's been great stories. Arizona State now resides in that conversation of one of the best stories of the year. What Kenny Dillingham is doing at Arizona State is nothing short of incredible. He took over a team that was ransacked and was just a really poor really not talented team, and he has now got them to 8 wins. They're 8-2, and they have a chance to if they beat BYU this weekend, a team that was just previously undefeated and ranked number 6 in the country. If they beat them, they will be playing for the Big 12 championship, and that is awesome. That is incredible. Kenny Dillingham deserves all the praise and all the credit. It is just amazing what he's been able to do. On top of that, if you haven't seen Cam Scatterbo run the football, you are missing out. He is incredible to watch. My favorite back this year for sure. Colin Baton Rouge, what are we doing at LSU here? Is Brian Kelly on a hot seat? I don't think so. I think largely because he has the number 4 class in the 2025 high school recruiting ranks coming in, including the number 1 quarterback and the number 1 recruit in the country. So you don't want to disrupt anything that could jeopardize what that class will look like, on top of the crazy buyout that would that would go with that. So he's not on a hot seat by any means, but man, this season is not going the way that they had hoped. Now, you can point back to the offseason where they did not leverage the portal the way that that people had hoped that they would. They knew that they were going to be short on the defensive line and in depth, and they knew that they needed to add depth just generally on the defense. And they didn't go in the portal to go do that. There was several D linemen that entered the portal that are now game changers at their new programs. You look at Harmon at Oregon, like he was available. So and LSU didn't make any bids for any of that. So they're in a really, really rough place right now. And I'm not sure what the vibes are for LSU. You saw a bunch of videos of BK going crazy on the sideline. I'm not sure how bought in these players are into the program. We'll see. I don't want to make those accusations or anything, but man, they do not look like they're having fun out there this year. Who is going to win the Natty? I have no idea. Oregon showed some blemishes and some vulnerability this weekend. You have about 6 teams that could potentially win the Natty from the SEC. Who knows? Ohio State's still up in there. Like this year, the parity is really ringing through this year, and it has made for a very, very fun season. I have no idea who's going to win the Natty, which is going to make this playoffs very fun. Interesting about this, are we sure about Texas? Texas doesn't have that strong of a resume, to be honest. And like Arkansas might be their best win. Arkansas, Michigan, they don't really have that many good wins. And they kind of got blown out by Georgia, who has really shown some vulnerability as well this year. And they did not look good against Arkansas. Arkansas was in this game late in the or deep in the fourth quarter, and Arkansas had chances to pull away, and they didn't. So obviously, credit to Texas in that regard. But I'm not so sure about Texas. They've been really skating by with a very favorable SEC schedule. So we'll see. They got Texas A&M coming up at the end of the year. So we'll see how that goes. Louisville, that's our Lulz team of the weekend. About 20-plus point favorites to Stanford, and you lose outright. And just embarrassing. And that loss really doesn't look great for anyone in the ACC, where it's like Miami was able to hang their hat on that win, and SMU was able to hang their hat on that win, and then we saw that Louisville beat Clemson, so like, oh, wow, they're good, and they had a 7-point loss in Notre Dame. Like, man, you can't be going to Stanford and losing like that when you're Louisville. Like that's a bad loss. The American Conference, we've talked about it for several weeks now. The American Conference is one of the best conferences to watch. Tulane and Army will play for the American Conference Championship, and that's going to be awesome. Army's still undefeated. Tulane, like, really, really hitting their stride right now. That's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch that game. Kansas, speaking of hitting their stride, Kansas is hitting their stride. They knock off Iowa State and BYU in back-to-back weeks. The team that had, I think, 2 wins going into that Iowa State game in 2 weekends ago, now find themselves beating the top teams in the conference. This is the Kansas team that we thought that we were going to get this year. And they had not delivered that until these last 2 weeks. Unfortunately, it's a little too late for them to accomplish any of their goals. I think they still have 2 games left. They could fight for a bowl game, but man, they're dangerous right now in the Big 12. Oregon looking vulnerable for the first time in weeks. Like, they have been the only team that you could really look at and say, yeah, they have been looking really good this year. They've honestly been kind of coasting through games and not with a ton of effort and just keeping guys healthy. This was the first time that we have seen Oregon get pushed in threat to lose a game. Obviously, the Ohio State game was, but since then, Oregon's just been coasting and looking really good, and now we see them go on the road against the Wisconsin team that is not all that great, but obviously has a pulse, but that shakes things up and how we look at Oregon. So it'll be fun coming into the end of the season and a great Week 12. Follow Big Body Ball CFB on all socials.